Now let's see how we can actually apply Vlookup formula. As we have discussed, Vlookup is known as vertical lookup. So you can see the data is in vertical manner. Now let me explain you the data first. We have these game IDs with us, then highest score, average score, but the name of the teams are missing. If I go to the next worksheet, the shortcut to go to the next worksheet is Control Page Down, and there you can see we have a table with us in which we have game IDs and we have the name of the teams that is missing in the previous worksheet. I've shown this data in a simpler manner, and this is a very small piece of data because I just want to explain you Vlookup in a very easy manner. In the next exercises, we have large data sets. There we are going to apply Vlookup on. But here, just be with me and try to apply Vlookup on this small set of data. If you talk about Vlookup, it's just like an advanced version of a find function. Somehow, when you use a find function, you are finding it. If you forget about Vlookup and I give you a task to find out the name of the teams on the basis of these game IDs, what you will do? You will copy the first game ID, you will go over there, you will press Ctrl F, Ctrl V, it will find out the value which is 1, then you will copy the value from here and paste it over here. And that you have to do for 20 times. So to avoid that repetitive work, we actually use Vlookup in this case. Now let's see how we can do it. We're going to start the formula equals to Vlookup. I'll press tab to open up the formula, and there we have the syntax. I really want you to look at the syntax very carefully and read it. Lookup value, table array, column index number, and range lookup. There you can see that lookup value is bold right now. It means it's an active argument. And table array and column index number. All these first three arguments are mandatory. The last one, which is range lookup, is an optional argument. I'm going to explain you these arguments one by one, and I want you to think and compare it with the find function. It would be very easy for you to understand. Have a look. Lookup value is basically the value which is common in both the databases. If you use a find function, you must have one common value. On the basis of that, you can find any value. So that is game ID in this case. So lookup value will be the first game ID. I'm going to press comma and then table array. Table array is basically the next argument of this Vlookup formula and is actually a kind of a next step in find function. When you copy this game ID, you have to search it in the database that you have, and that is actually the table array in which we are going to search it. Now here, if you go to the next worksheet, which is references, there we have already seen we have two columns with us, game IDs and names. So here, this is going to be our table array. So let me select it like this. If I want, I can select the headings also, but you know that this is somehow not required. Now, very much important thing about the Vlookup is that this table array that you are selecting must contains two things. First is the common value, which is lookup value, and the second thing is the results. Doesn't matter in which column it is falling, but these two things must be there, because VLOOKUP will first match up the lookup value, and on the basis of that it will come up with the resulting values. So these two columns should be in the table array that you are selecting. This is the first thing about VLOOKUP. Now second thing about the VLOOKUP is basically that the first column of your table array, if I select it from here, my first column is the game IDs, and this should be your first column always. It means the first column of your table array must be that column in which you have the lookup values. Just think about it. Maybe we would have one more column over here in the name of serial number. And if by any chance, if I would have been selected from column G, it would try to match the lookup value, that game ID 1 that we have selected, in this column, and I would not get the correct result. So that is why I have to select the first column as the column in which we have the lookup values that we are going to match. So this is the second most important part about VLOOKUP that you need to always think about before writing this formula. Now I'm going to press comma and I'm going to jump to this column index number. So column index number is that column number of your table array from where you want the ultimate values. It means the results. Just think about it. We have selected these two columns. Now, how would VLOOKUP would come to know that from which column it need to take up the values from? Right now, these are only two columns, but what if it would have been 20 columns? How would VLOOKUP know that from which column it has to pick up the values? So that we need to assign as a number. Now think about it. Names, that is what we need ultimately. And names are coming in column I. And we need to assign a number of that column. If you think about I, that is coming at the 9th position if you count it on finger from A to I. That is coming at the 9th position. So it would be 9. But that's wrong. Column index number is the column number of your table array that you have selected and from which you want the ultimate results. So that is why if we have selected from column H as our table array, so this is going to be our column number 1 and this is going to be our column number 2. So that is why in this case column index number is 2. And by any chance if we would have one more column in between, then the column index number would become 3. And what if we would have a column over here with the values and we have selected it till here? Then the column index number would remain 2 because we want the values from column number 2. Now the third most important part about VLOOKUP. If I interchange these columns, VLOOKUP will not work because your resulting cells should always be on the right hand side of your lookup values. It means this column index number cannot be in negative. You cannot go towards left. VLOOKUP always search towards the right, always. So I hope that is clear to you, and if you have a bit of a confusion, we have a lot of examples coming up. So just bear with me, and you need to do a lot of practice on this also. So the column index number in this case would be 2 as a number, comma. Now the last thing, and where a lot of people have always a confusion on, true or false? What do we need to go with? But first, what is the meaning of them? What is approximate match and what is exact match? Now think about this example only that we are using Vlookup in right now. As you have noticed, the first game ID that we are searching here is game ID 1. If I go with true, what Vlookup will try to do is that it will try to match up that 1 in this range, and if by any chance it will find an approximate match of that value 1 over here, it will come up the value from column 2 of that value. For example, 10 has a number 1 in it. So maybe it would be an approximate match of that 1, and I'll get this name as the game ID is the name of the team, which is actually wrong. The name is something else for game ID 1. So that is why we 99% of time always go with false, which is exact match. If we are searching game ID 1 over here, I would really want Vlookup to exactly match 1 and then only pick up the result from the column index number that I have given, else it will show us an A, not available. I hope this is clear to you. I'm also going to show you an example of true in the coming videos. So right now we are doing the exact match, which is false. So either you can select it, like if I click down arrow on my keyboard, it will highlight false option, and if I press tab, it will select the false for me. So here basically false means false is equals to 0 and true is equals to 1. So here we need false, so either I can type in false or I can select it from here, or I can put 0 also. Both are same. And for true it is 1. So true is equals to 1. One last thing guys, if you just have a look at this range lookup, this is an optional argument. What if I leave this argument? What will happen? I'll tell you. When you leave any optional argument and whenever it has a list, by default it will pick up the very first option given in the list if you leave it. So that is why we have forcefully need to assign 0 over here or false. So I've already written 0 and I'll close down the bracket and I'll press enter. And there we go, we are getting the answer. Now I'll double click on the right bottom corner of the cell to get the results for all. But hey, what happened? Lot of cells are showing me NA. You remember I have just told you why this NA is coming? When the game ID is not available there, it will show me NA. Remember, because we have used false, which is exact match. It means that game ID 7 is not there. So just go to the next worksheet and let's see that is it really is not there or is there any problem with that. Let me go to the next worksheet and there we go. Hey, what happened over here? 7 is already there and the name is also there, but still we are getting NA. So somehow there is a problem. So let me show you that. Here comes the concept of references, which is the use of $sign. I'll explain you why this is happening. You know that Excel by default change references when you copy a formula and paste it down. You may have noticed that earlier also. You remember we have covered the text functions. There we have written equals to lower and we have selected the very first cell, and when we copy and paste it down, it has shown the results for all. and was changing the references. Now the same thing is happening over here. Just have a look. Right now the answer for this I'm getting. And what I'm trying to do is I'm searching A6, which is game ID 1 in references H2 to I21. Game ID 1 in references H2 to I21. So when I go to the next worksheet, have a look. Let me select the range, which is H2 to I21. This is the range. In this range, we have game ID 1. That is why we are getting the result over there. Now, when I copy and paste it down, remember this thing, this A6 will become A7, which is game ID 2, isn't it? So, H2 to I21 will also become H3 to I22 because references change accordingly. This is known as relative reference. And guys, Excel works by default on relative reference. So have a look. A6 become A7 and H2 to I21 become H3 to I22. Let's check this also. Now we are searching game ID 2 in H3 to I22. So let me go to the next worksheet by pressing Ctrl page down. And now H3 to I22 is this range, which is this one. Now you may have noticed that this actually slipped away by one row. But still we are getting the answer because this game ID 2 is there in the selection. So let me go to the previous worksheet by pressing Ctrl page up, and this is the way we can copy and paste it down, and you can see the references are changing. Now let's see the problem area, which is NA. We are getting NA for game ID 7 in H8 to I27. So we are searching A12, which is game ID 7 in H8 to I27. So let me go to the next worksheet. Let me select H8, which is this one, and I27. So let me go a bit down, and there we go. We have H8 to I27. Tell me where we have that game ID 7 in the selection. That is not there, and that is here. So that is why something which is not in the selection will not provide us an answer. So the problem is not in our working, not is with Excel also. The problem is that as a layman, we just want that this H2 to I21 should remain H2 to I21 throughout in all the formula when I copy and paste it down. So here I just want to explain you the concept of references. So for that, I would want you to pause this video now and go to an exercise which is based on type of references, which is 0602, the next video, which is 0602 type of references, use of $sign. There I am going to explain you that how we can do it, and then resume this video to get the correct answer. Now, if you have seen that video, you know that whatever is changing, either column or row, you just need to put a $sign before that to freeze it. Now, let me open up the formula for you over here. You can actually go to the formulas, and there is an option which is show formula. When I click on this, you can see all the formulas open in front of us. Now you can see that things are changing. So the references are also H2 to I21, H3 to I22, and so on. Now the problem area is this references, these ranges. And in this also, if you notice that H and I are same throughout, but what is changing? The rows, which is 2 and 21. And because of that, we are having the problem and the range is slipping away in that worksheet. So we need to freeze it so that it should be same throughout. So we need to put a $sign just before 2 and 21. So let me click over here and manually put a $sign by pressing Shift and $sign on my keyboard, and again just before 21, so that when I press enter it will remain same, and when I copy and paste it down by double clicking, you can see everything will become H2 to I21. Now it is not changing. So when I click on the show formula again to disable this option, it will show me results for all. This one is actually the result, so do not carry it away by this part. Now this is one way of writing this formula, but practically we do not take that much time to write this VLOOKUP. How we do it? Let me delete it for you. I have selected it by pressing Ctrl Shift down arrow, and I'm pressing delete on my keyboard to delete it. Now I'm starting the formula again. Equals to VLOOKUP. I'm pressing tab to open up the formula. Now you know that how we can write it. Lookup value will be the game ID, comma, I'll go to the next worksheet, control page down, and I'll select the range that is from here H2 to I21. Now you notice that H and I were not changing because we are not changing the columns when we copy and pasting it down. It is just changing the rows. If we would have been copying and pasting towards right or left, then only the columns would change. It means the columns are not changing in any way. Only these rows are changing. So if I technically put a $sign before H and I also, that would not make any difference because H and I are already same, and we have to put a $sign just before 2 and 21. So if I put $sign everywhere in this range, that would not make any difference. So the shortcut of doing that, when you select this, and it will show you this kind of moving selection, and when you press F4 on your keyboard, it will freeze everything. Just remember one thing, in few systems, you have to use function key with F4, then only it will put a $sign. Again, if I press F4, because it's a toggle shortcut, again if I press F4, but before that, this is actually an absolute reference that you have learned in that reference video. Again, if I press F4, it will change into a mixed reference where only the rows are freezed. Again, if I press F4, it will put a $sign just before column and not before rows. Again is a mixed reference. If I press again F4, this is going to be a relative reference again, which is a default one. So I have to press F4 only once so that it will freeze everything for me. Comma, column index number is 2 as we discussed earlier, comma, false or 0 for exact match. So when I close down the bracket here and when I press enter, it will show me the result. And then if I copy and paste it down by double clicking on this right bottom corner of the cell, it will copy and paste down the formula and I'll get results for all as the range is not anymore slipping away. So I hope you got the idea. I want you to practice as much as possible. I have a lot of videos on this and exercise files on this. So just go to the next video and exercise file and do that by yourself. Thank you.